Dan, I like the wording that you used, climate catastrophists. You know, everybody's voting in for, what I suppose feels good and the right thing to do. But, the wording in terms of transitioning to renewables, is a bit of a misnomer. It's taken a lot longer than anybody thought and at a much higher cost. What do you make? Because I know you write a lot about this, the word transition, and what Canadians need to really understand about this. They're now paying attention because they're seeing these high gas prices.
Well, they're seeing that the transition is not without consequence, that it is painful and that it's likely unnecessary because it's not going to drop the very one thing that everyone is looking to try to address, and that's emissions, CO2 emissions. What it is instead doing is creating an environment, as you're seeing, for instance, in Germany, where in the pursuit, without looking before you leap, you now wind up having to, rely more on coal production, oil production. You're actually defeating the very thing that you did because there has been a very significant amount of short-sightedness that has gone into this. You're also destroying demand. And by that, I don't mean, people basically choosing to go from an internal combustion engine to an EV. Not that those things can't be built without a significant amount of hydrocarbons. You're actually creating a scenario of impoverishing and making the world less resilient to the shocks that we've seen post-COVID. And so I think Canada has an opportunity. It's insulated because it has had this advantage for many years. But if it continues to go down this road willfully blind to what is happening in Europe and around the world, we may very well find ourselves in a situation of economic dislocation on a scale we haven't seen since the 1980s.
Hmm. And Dan, when you are looking at the impact that the higher gas prices is having on Canadians right now, what are you seeing?
I'm seeing a lot of people in shock. These prices have not just stopped at fuel. They've gone into food. They've gone into pretty much everything that we pay for. And so there's a sense that our wages are not reflecting these massive increases in the cost of living. And while some talk about, and it's true, I mean, there's a supply disruption. COVID has created some of this. The one elephant in the room that continues to be overlooked by economists, by others, is the fact that energy prices, which are at the core of our economy, have been allowed to get away from us. And we have a government, of course, in Ottawa that doesn't just realize that these prices are damaging the bottom line for every consumer. They're actually adding to the burden with these carbon taxes, not just the first one, which increases more substantially as of April 1st, but the second one, the clean fuel standard, which will accomplish absolutely nothing other than to risk the cost benefit analysis in which the benefits will be far less than the cost and the burden to consumers. I think you're going to lose people along the way, and rightly so. I think Canadians are at an inflection point where they're starting to say maybe it isn't such a bad idea to actually build pipelines in this country to rescue the world at a time of energy insecurity.
Right. I mean, people need to know that there's another carbon tax, there's another gas tax coming, correct?
Yes, yes, there is. So there are the two that with the one that we're familiar with, and it increases by $15 a ton, which means 3 cents a liter, 4 cents for diesel starting April 1st up to 2030. The second carbon tax, not well understood. That's to get companies to reduce their emissions. Refineries will do that for the first year, but come 2024, you're looking at a 4 cent increase every year to 2030. We're going to look at a 20 to 25 cent increase in the price of diesel and gasoline by 2030. You're going to be looking at another 30, 35 by 2030 on the first carbon tax. And let's not forget, this won't reduce our carbon emissions. More importantly, you're now looking at regulating the oil and gas sector to the extent that you want them to cut back emissions by 48%. It's mathematically and scientifically impossible. Companies are already doing this. We're getting no credit for it right now. Unfortunately for Canada, it's a recipe. It's really a recipe for disaster for the country. It's a suicide note being pushed by the Liberals and the NDP, of which I was a member for many years.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think for a lot of Canadians, damage is about to hit us.
Why are they still going down this path when it's so damaging to Canadians?
I think they're indifferent to what is happening and hoping that the narrative by opinion leaders will continue to be that we need to go this route. But I think anybody who's reading the papers or looking at news and watching online knows the disaster that awaits Canada if we go down the road of the mistakes that Europe has made over 30 years. Trillions of dollars invested, much of it public money. I'd love to be able to look at some of these renewable companies and see just how much money they've actually been able to make or to produce for their shareholders without the benefit of having a direct connection to the taxpayers' funds. Because at the end of the day, I don't think the private sector is making a big move unless encouraged, goaded, or whipped into having to make
Yeah,
those investments. The reality is going to start to hit this country very quickly.
absolutely. Okay, quick break. We'll be right back.